A Chinese company just built a battery that charges a full electric car in 5 minutes. That is faster than filling a tank of gas. That is not a concept. That is not a lab prototype. It is shipping in production cars right now. The company is called CATL. It is the largest battery maker on Earth, and it just solved the problem that has kept millions of people from buying an EV. Range anxiety is over. The last real advantage of the combustion engine just disappeared. And every battery lab in the West spent the last decade trying to crack what CATL did first. If you care about where the car industry is actually heading, hit like and subscribe. We cover the shifts most people miss until they are already over. Now here is what just changed. The average Tesla takes 30 minutes to charge to 80% at a supercharger. The average gas car fills in 4 minutes. For 10 years, that gap kept half of all car buyers from even considering an EV. CATL just closed it. And the battery does not just charge fast. It also goes 600 miles on a single charge. That is more than most gas cars. And it costs less to make than the lithium-ion cells in a Tesla right now. So why does this matter beyond cars? Because for a decade, the combustion engine survived on one fact. You could not road trip in an EV without planning your life around chargers. That just ended, and CATL did not do it alone. BYD is shipping the same technology in its new flagship sedan. Together they make 70% of the world's EV batteries. They are not startups. They are not making promises. They are manufacturing millions of cells a year. And the West has no answer. QuantumScape has been promising a solid-state battery since 2015. It still has not shipped a single commercial cell. Solid Power has been funded by Ford and BMW since 2017. Still no production battery. Toyota announced a breakthrough in 2023. Still years away from a car you can buy. CATL and BYD skipped the press releases. They went straight to production. And now the entire Western battery industry is trying to figure out what just happened. Because this is not about one technology. It is about the speed at which China moves from lab to factory. That gap is widening, and it is starting to look permanent. So what makes this battery different? Why did it take so long, and why did China crack it first? The answer starts with a problem that has haunted batteries since the 1800s. Every battery has two parts, an anode and a cathode. Between them sits a material called an electrolyte. In a lithium-ion battery, that electrolyte is a liquid, and liquid has a fatal flaw. It catches fire. Every Tesla fire. Every Samsung phone recall, every laptop battery that swelled up and died, all caused by the same thing, liquid electrolyte. So for decades, researchers tried to replace the liquid with a solid, a ceramic or a glass compound that does the same job, but does not burn. The idea is simple. The execution is brutal, because solid materials are terrible at moving ions. That is what a battery does. It moves lithium ions back and forth between the anode and cathode. Fast ion movement equals fast charging. Slow ion movement equals a battery that takes hours. Liquid electrolytes let ions fly. Solid ones trap them. For 30 years, no one could make a solid electrolyte that was both safe and fast. Then CATL found the answer. They developed a composite material, part ceramic, part polymer. The ceramic gives you the safety. The polymer gives you the conductivity, and they figured out how to manufacture it at scale, without the material cracking under pressure. That last part is what killed every Western attempt. QuantumScape has a solid electrolyte that works in the lab, but when you try to make 1 million cells a year, the ceramic cracks. The battery fails. CATL solved the manufacturing problem. That is the entire breakthrough, and the numbers prove it works. A standard lithium-ion cell charges at 1C. That means it takes 1 hour to fully charge. CATL's solid-state cell charges at 6C. That is 6 times faster. It reaches 80% in 5 minutes, 100% in 10. And because the electrolyte is solid, it does not degrade the way liquid does. A Tesla battery loses 20% of its capacity after 8 years. CATL says their solid-state cells will still have 90% capacity after 15 years. That is double the lifespan. Now compare that to what the West has managed. QuantumScape's best prototype hits 4C, still slower than CATL. Solid Power's latest cell does 2.5C, half the speed, and neither company can make them at volume. They are still hand-building cells in labs. CATL has 3 gigafactories running at full capacity. They are making enough cells to power 5 million cars a year. BYD just opened a second solid-state line in Shenzhen. The gap is not closing, it is getting wider. So who is actually using these batteries right now? BYD is putting them in the Seal sedan. It costs $30,000. That is $5,000 less than a Tesla Model 3. And it charges faster. NIO is launching a solid-state SUV next quarter. Geely just announced a sedan with a 700-mile range using CATL cells. These are not concepts, they are production cars. You can walk into a dealership in Shenzhen and drive one home today, and they are all cheaper than their Western equivalents. That price gap is the real threat, because Western automakers cannot match it. A Tesla Model 3 with a solid-state battery would cost $50,000 just to break even. CATL makes their cells for 30% less than Panasonic. BYD owns the entire supply chain. They mine the lithium, they refine it, they build the cells, they install them in the car. Every step happens in China, and every step is cheaper than the Western equivalent. Ford and GM do not have a path to compete on price. And speed is the other advantage China will not give up. CATL went from first prototype to mass production in 3 years. QuantumScape has been working on its cell for 9 years. Still no production date. Toyota promised a solid-state car by 2027. That is still 3 years out. BYD and CATL are shipping today, and they are already working on the next generation. CATL announced a 10-minute full-charge cell for 2026. BYD is testing an 800-mile range battery. The West is not catching up. It is falling further behind. Now here is what this ends. The combustion engine survived this long because of 3 things: driving range, refueling speed, and infrastructure. EVs had worse range. They took forever to charge, and there were not enough chargers. Solid-state batteries just killed all 3. 600 miles is more than most gas cars. 5 minutes is faster than a gas stop, and you can charge at home overnight. The combustion engine no longer has a single technical advantage. It is just more expensive to run and worse for the air. That is the moment oil companies were dreading, because once EVs are better on every metric, the market does not slowly shift. It collapses. Look at what happened to film cameras. Kodak dominated for a century, then digital cameras got good enough. Within 5 years, film was dead. Kodak filed for bankruptcy. The same thing happened to Blockbuster, to Nokia, to BlackBerry. Industries do not decline, they vanish. And combustion engines are next. China just made sure of it. And the Western battery industry is in the same position. Because this is not just about solid state. It is about who controls the entire supply chain. China mines 60% of the world's lithium. They refine 80%. They make 90% of the anodes, 70% of the cathodes. And now they have the best battery chemistry. The US and Europe have nothing close. They import everything. And they are about to find out what that means when the company that makes your batteries also makes your competitor's car. Tesla knows this. That is why they tried to build a battery plant in Texas. It is 3 years behind schedule. They still import most of their cells from CATL. Ford announced a battery joint venture in Michigan. Then they found out the equipment all comes from China. The machines, the materials, the engineers who know how to run the line. GM invested $7 billion in battery production. They are still not producing at scale. Every Western attempt hits the same wall. China has a 15-year head start, and it is not waiting. So what happens next? China does not stop at solid state. They are already testing sodium-ion batteries. They cost half as much as lithium. They work in freezing temperatures. And they use materials that are everywhere. No rare earths, no supply chain choke points. If sodium-ion scales the way solid state did, the price of an EV drops to $15,000. At that point, the combustion engine does not just lose, it becomes financially insane to buy one. And that moment is maybe 3 years out. BYD is already selling a sodium-ion car in China for $12,000. It has a 200-mile range. That is enough for 90% of daily driving, and it costs less than a used Honda Civic. CATL just announced a hybrid cell, sodium and lithium in the same pack. You get 400 miles of range for $20,000. That beats every gas car on price and performance. And neither company is done. They are still driving costs down, because that is how you win a market. You make the competition obsolete. And the speed at which this is happening is what no one expected. 5 years ago, EVs were luxury toys. Today, they are the fastest-selling vehicle segment in China. They outsell gas cars in Norway, in Iceland, in the Netherlands. Next year, they will outsell gas in Germany. The year after that in France. And then the UK. The tipping point is not coming. It already happened. The West just has not felt it yet, because China kept the best batteries for themselves. Now they are exporting them. And that changes everything, because Western automakers built their entire strategy on batteries staying expensive. They assumed EVs would be a premium segment for another decade. They were wrong. BYD is now the largest EV maker on Earth. They passed Tesla in sales last quarter. And they did it by making EVs cheaper than gas cars. Not in the future, right now. Ford lost $4 billion on EVs last year. GM lost $3 billion. They are both still trying to sell expensive electric SUVs to early adopters. Meanwhile, BYD is selling cheap sedans to everyone. That is how you kill an industry. And it is not just cars. Solid-state batteries work in anything that needs power. CATL is putting them in trucks, in buses, in construction equipment, in cargo ships. BYD is testing them in drones, in grid storage, in backup power systems. Every single application where diesel ruled is now up for grabs. And China has the only batteries that can do it at scale. That is the part most people are missing. This is not about cars, it is about energy, and energy is everything. So what does the West do now? The Biden administration tried tariffs. They slapped a 100% duty on Chinese EVs. That does not matter, because BYD is building factories in Mexico, in Hungary, in Thailand. They will make the cars locally. The batteries still come from China. And the savings are so big they can absorb the tariff and still undercut Ford. Europe tried subsidies. They are paying automakers to build battery plants. Then they found out they have to buy the equipment from China. Every move just proves the same point. You cannot regulate your way out of losing. The only way to compete is to build better batteries faster. That means copying what China did. Vertical integration. Own the mines. Own the refineries. Own the factories. Cut the costs. Speed up the timelines. And accept that you are 10 years behind. No Western company is willing to do that. They want to protect margins. They want to move slowly. They want to keep the same business model that made them rich. That model is dead. It died the day CATL shipped a 5-minute battery, and no one is coming to save them. Because this is not a story about one battery. It is a story about who controls the next century of energy. And right now, that is China. They have the materials. They have the technology. They have the manufacturing. And they are moving faster than anyone else. The 5-minute battery is just the beginning. Next comes the 3-minute battery. Then the solid-state truck. Then the grid-scale storage system. Then the sodium-ion breakthrough. Each one makes the last one obsolete. And each one pushes the West further behind. So here is where we are. A farmer's son from Fujian, who started with a refrigerator parts factory, just rewrote the future of transportation. The combustion engine ruled for 130 years. It is over. The question is not if, it is how fast. And the answer is faster than anyone in Detroit or Tokyo wants to believe. Because every time a new CATL battery hits the market, the math shifts. Every time BYD opens a factory, the price drops. And every time a driver realizes they can charge in 5 minutes and never buy gas again, the old world gets a little bit smaller. The future of driving was not decided in Stuttgart or Detroit. It was decided in Ningda, and most of the world is still catching up to that fact. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The next story out of China makes this look like a warm-up. And drop a comment. Would a 5-minute charge change your mind about going electric? I read every single one.